Hello, everyone. Welcome to my live broadcast with question and answer. I'm Heather Carlisle, and tonight I'm talking about something that most people are interested in, and it's the top complaint when a couple comes to see me in my office, in my private practice office, when I'm wearing my hat as the marriage counselor. It is we fight or we argue and we keep doing the same thing over and over again. It keeps getting worse, and we don't know how to stop it. We don't know what to do instead. So I thought that I would share with you the simple, quick top secrets tonight about how to stop arguing. Guaranteed. Now, you may have been arguing with someone you love for a year, for a decade, for all different kinds of reasons. And so sometimes these three top secrets to stopping arguing are going to work immediately. Sometimes it takes a little more than that. So I know that relationships are complex, and sometimes there's more to learn than just these three skills that I'm going to teach you tonight. But this should make a difference immediately. And the three top secrets are they're one word beginning in Y. So there's yes, there's you, and there's yours. Notice this is always focused away from yourself and not about me, mine, I. So when we want to communicate and stop arguing, typically what happens is there are two people, and like Carl Hendricks says, there are two people each having a monologue, each person wanting to give their view or their side. And of course, that's the typical foundation for all arguing, is that each person has their side and nobody gets heard and nothing gets really accomplished. So when I introduce couples to excellent communication, the first thing I do is give them a long, quite detailed quiz on how good are you at listening. Now, listening isn't just not talking, of course. So if you would like my quiz on not listening, just give me an email and I'll send that to you. So it's my listening quiz. Just email me at heatherc@heathercarlisle.com. So the very first thing that I teach couples is about the little game that most of us get into. Not everybody, but most everybody does. And I call it the bunny yabbit and rabbit yabbit game. So bunny yabbit and rabbit yabbit get into this back and forth communication pattern that really doesn't communicate and really doesn't get anything accomplished, because one person says something and then the other person says, yeah, but you didn't listen to my side, or yeah, but I disagree with you. So let's look at that. And any of you who are listening this evening, I would love to hear from you, your examples, your questions, your yabbits to what I am sharing with you this evening. So first of all, what we want to look at is these three secrets. So the first one is yes. And if the other person has communicated something, my response, my preferred first response is yes. It can be yes, I see, yes, I understand, yes, I'm listening, yes, I'm interested, yes, I heard you. Something or other that says, I am opening to you and saying yes to you. A lot of times communication starts with yeah, but, or yes, but. And notice whenever you hear a but, The but says, that was wrong and this is right. So we want to say yes or yeah and, not but. So you want to say, yes, I understand. I'm open to understanding you. Yes, I see your point. Yes, I heard you. Yes, I'm interested. And then no, yes, but. Because that's the beginning, isn't it? The yes gives the person permission to express themselves. Um, and the yes, I see, or yes, I understand, or yes, I want to understand, or I want to understand, or I want to see, um, offers an invitation for more from the other person. So at this point, you're in agreement, and there's not going to be an argument. So the other person is usually going to say, oh, you're interested, and here's more about what I think about that particular thing. So then the second secret, so that's the first one, and no matter what it is, you want to say first yes. It's interesting if you give me examples about different people, different times, different issues, different places. Sometimes we don't want to say yes. Sometimes we disagree. Sometimes we have an entirely different viewpoint. And yet, you're not going to get anywhere until you say yes first. You'll get your turn sooner or later if you play it right. If you abide by these 3 why secrets: the yes, you, and your. So the first thing is yes. And I'm thinking, here's an example from a teenager say, you never let me drive the car. Well, the typical response to that is, you're wrong. I do let you drive the car. And then it becomes a conflict and an argument. So the first thing is, yes, I know you probably feel like I never let you drive the car. Oh, well, you understand me then. Oh. So immediately you're not in conflict anymore. Whatever it is that the other person communicates, the first response is yes. And even when you disagree, even when what the other person's saying is not accurate, they said it for a reason. And if they said it for a reason, then you want to know what's going on. Or you want to move into an interaction that's going to go somewhere and not waste your time. So if you have any examples for me of when it's hard for you to say yes, I'd like to hear those. So then the next thing is, after yes, you. Now, this is, the next step is, yes, I'm interested, and I'm listening, and I want to know, I want to understand. And the other person says, well, yes, you understood that, and, or but, you didn't get this part. Oh, well, then let me hear that part. Okay. So then that's the yes part. I'm hearing you. I'm understanding you. Then the next part is validation. And that one says, I need to say what I just heard. So it goes into then, well, you think, or what I hear you saying, or is I understand you to say, or is this what you're wanting, or is this how you see it? So you. Again, you're approaching them and you're saying to them, you're wanting to communicate this to me. And I get it because this is what I heard. This is what you said. This is what you said you want. This is where you're coming from. And that validation then guarantees that the other person inside says, well, they really did listen. You don't need to say whether or not you agree with them. That's not part of the stopping argument and getting good communication and going down the road that's constructive. Your view needs to be set aside for a while, only for a while, not for forever. You're not going to get to your view until you hear the other person's view. Now, of course, in a communication or in an argument, it doesn't matter who stops. It doesn't matter who says, well, let me come over on your side and let me listen to you. Let me say yes to what you just wanted to communicate to me, and let me validate you, because this is what I think I'm hearing you say. So I'm going to validate and say, not only do I understand you, but this is what you want. This is what you think. And this is how you're feeling about this, etc., etc. So that validation then says, and this is especially important for a guy communicating with a woman. Women usually relax inside when we know that we are validated, which means you are interested in understanding us. We don't expect you to agree with us, but that you're interested in our view, in our vision, our point. So that's the you part, where, so the first part that I shared is, yes, I'm interested, I see, I understand, I want to understand. And then the next part is, you, this is what you're saying, this is what you want, this is what you want to communicate to me, this is your idea. So rather than, well, you should think this way, or you should do that, or how come you're not doing this? Well, that's not quite right, you're wrong, or you're off base. We want the you always to be a validation rather than a you should or you're wrong. So keep your disagreement, keep your view to yourself if you really want to communicate well. And then the third why is you're right about that rather than you're wrong about that. Now, you may think that part of what they're saying is wrong, or part of what they're saying is accurate, or inappropriate, or irrelevant. And if you articulate that, if you walk down that road of saying somehow or another you're wrong, it's not going to go anywhere, is it? Then again, you're going to end up arguing. So the first thing, you want to say, you're right. Yeah, you're right to, I can see how you would have that opinion. So notice the three whys. The first one is yes, I want to know. The second one is you. This is what I'm understanding you to say. Am I correct in understanding this? I am validating that I listened and I heard and I understood. And then the third one is you want. Because yes, I understood this, but what I'm also telling you is I'm hearing that this is what you want. And you're right about this. So I can see why you would want that, because I can see how you're right in your reasoning or your value or your method of solving a problem, rather than saying you're wrong. Does that make sense? So this bottom line is truly unselfish. It's putting aside your view, your thoughts, or me, if I were to use it that way, I would be putting aside my view, my thoughts, my assumptions, my strategies, my goals, and my opinions, and just leaving them over there. Not saying that they're not equally valuable, but I'm just going to leave them over there. And I am going to just enter into your view. That is immediate stopping of arguing. It stops fighting because there's nothing to push against. You've in those three words, yes, you, and you're right, you've moved yourself to their side for the moment. Not saying that your side, even though it's different, may not be um, opposed to that or make it wrong. Usually it isn't. Usually both sides, when I'm working with a couple and they get into fights, then I facilitate talking about it this way, where, okay, only one person at a time. It's going to be fair. We're going to talk to both this person and this person, but we can only do one at a time. So we're going to start with this person, and all of us are going to focus on what this person is thinking, is desiring, what their view is. So I may spend an hour just listening to one person's side and really understanding what they think, what they want, what they don't want. And always, when you start listening at a deep level, you're going to hear clues. You're going to hear verbal clues. You're going to get conceptual clues, so that you start to understand underneath, no matter what it is they say, it's driven by something that they care about. And we want to be extremely respectful for that. One of the things that couples get in and people get in arguments about is parenting or child raising or taking care of the kids. And so, you know the typical argument. One person is a little more strict and the other person is a little more easygoing. And oftentimes they're both right. And yet, if they can't suspend their view and come over here and learn and understand the other person's view, they're not going to get anywhere, are they? Thank you for tuning in tonight, too. So I hope this makes sense. And I'm wondering if it's applying to the ways that you find yourself fighting, or you see people around you fighting or arguing and maybe getting nowhere. I'd love to hear from you. If you have an example that's difficult for you, or you're not exactly sure how to apply my 3 why secret steps. So I'm going to write in here so that you can see them. The yes, I see. And the you think that. And the you're right. So 3 whys, which is wise, right? So when we get into arguments, we get into that way where I call it the bunny yabbit and the rabbit yabbit game. So usually this is how it goes. Over here, Bunny says, Rab, I'm thinking about we should take a vacation at Y. What do you think? And then Rab says, yeah, but I think we should take a vacation at X. What do you think? And then Bun says, yeah, but you didn't even consider my Y. And Rab says, yeah, but you didn't consider my X. And then Bun says, yeah, but you're not listening to me. And Rab says, yeah, but you're not listening to me. And it ends up going back and forth with this yabbit tennis match where it never stops. Neither person is ever heard. And the but says, my side is more important to me than your side, and I'm not budging from my side. So this is usually, not always, but usually this is the beginning of an argument or the beginning of a fight. If the couple or the 2 people don't know how to get out of the bunny yabbit and the rabbit yabbit game, what happens is it gets louder and it gets more negative and it becomes defensive. Where if I'm in this conversation, which is now an argument with another person, I'm now defending myself. And immediately, if we're in defense mode, that says, I'm defending myself from that person who is obviously attacking me and the enemy, because I have to defend myself, right? When we get into that kind of a defensive mode, then both people move into what I call courtroom, which is, I'm going to defend my case and I am going to prosecute you and prove that your case is wrong. And that's when those arguments go into that place, and I'm sure you've either done this or seen this, where you're saying, well, I have proof that my side is worthy of being heard and considered. I'm going to remind you of what you said last week. You said this and this and this and so. And that's a part of my case proving that I'm right and you're wrong. Well, and then the other person says, oh, well, I have a case that proves not just from last week, but from 3 years ago that my side is right and you're wrong. Well, then it goes into, well, 3 years ago, well, your mother, well, your father, well, etc., etc. And it escalates. They build a case higher and higher and higher to prove that they're right and the other person is wrong, just like in a courtroom prosecuting. So then, of course, if you're a defendant and a prosecutor, you are now genuine enemies, and you're gathering fuel against the other person. And you may have experienced this in some way, where couples are, or people are, dear friends, and they share vulnerable things with each other. If they get into the courtroom argument, they will take that which was revealed in a sincere and vulnerable way and use it as fuel against the other person in this courtroom battle. Then we start breaking down trust. And then we don't want to tell the truth. Then we don't want to be friends or good friends anymore, because if we tell the truth, it may just come up and be used against us. So that's the largest pattern that I see in relationships where people begin to argue. And all of that can be sidestepped or obviated or just never happens if instead of saying, yeah, but, we say, yes. Or yes, and tell me more. Or yes, I think I see. Does this make sense? If any of you have an example that's tough for you in arguing or in fighting, go ahead and type it in and I'll use it as an example. So then what we want to do, rather than in an argument want to share our side next, we don't do that until we're finished working on the other person's part. So remember, there's first the yes, which is the agreement, and then there is you think that, and you think this is validation. And that means that I am going to suspend my view and just consider how often you are able to do this, or people you know are able to do this, where they don't just yeah but, or they don't say their part, or they don't tell you the story about how they experienced this, but they suspend themselves, their own views, their own stories, and want to know more about you, your view, your stories. Think about how seldom that happens, where somebody is truly interested and wants to know your thoughts or you at a deeper and deeper level. When I give corporate seminars, sometimes listening is a part of that work. And what I've discovered is, if I ask for a show of hands from the people in the class, how many of you have experienced being truly heard? Someone who really stopped everything and listened completely to you. And it's very interesting. Like, for example, in a room of 30 people, there may be 1 to 3 or 4 people who raise their hand. Only that many people have had the experience of being completely heard in a relationship, in a conversation with someone who truly, completely listened to them. And when I asked them what that experience was like for them, the answer, if they really start thinking deeply about it, the answer is always something to do with being respected or honored or cared for or loved, depending on whether it's personal or professional or public. But it's a way that we express the utmost in care, wherever it is, from the intimate to the public. And pretty much that's what we're interested in, isn't it? Is caring for each other. So it means that you need to decide at some point that you are going to suspend your view, to suspend your need for control, to suspend what you want, or to complain about what you don't have, and to leave that over here and move over into the other person's territory sincerely and honestly and in a learning mode where you say, okay, I want to know more about this. I'm going to next validate you. Is my validation correct? This is what I think you want. This is the strategy you have. This is your value. This is your view. Am I on track? If not, let me interview you. And so it ends up that you are a curious learner and a sincere person of honor and respect about listening to the person who wants to communicate. Do you see how that's the complete opposite of arguing and fighting? So that's the second why. That's the validation. You think, is this right? Always and I do this in my private practice, where someone will tell a story, or they'll tell their side, or they'll talk about what's wrong, and then I check it out. Is this what's going on? Do I understand you correctly? Am I on track? And so when I get it, cool, now we know where we're at. And then the third why is you're right versus you're wrong. Now, sometimes it's hard to say you're right because you're thinking, well, this isn't right. I don't agree with this. And that's not good communication, because at this point, we're not interested in what we're going to get accomplished. We're not interested in what direction we're going to go. We're not interested in how to match strategies or values. We're just interested in learning about the other person's side, the other person's view. So then what you want to do after you validate is go over there and see if you're on track with where they want to go. So it's like, you're right. I see that this is the way you think it ought to work. So if we're looking at parenting, for example, and let's take the part, first of all, of the person who is a little more authoritarian, and they want to give consequences, where they say, this is a wrong thing to do. This is going to deprive the child or another child. This is going to teach them the wrong thing. If we let them stay up an hour late, then they're always going to want to stay up an hour late. We have to hold the line and be absolutely disciplined with this. And so if you disagree with that, you can't say that. The first thing you need to say is, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. if we let this child stay up tonight, yes, that is going to implant the expectation that they're going to get to stay up tomorrow or other nights. Yes, you're right about that. So then, instead of saying, no, you're wrong, that's not going to affect the child for the rest of their lives, etc., etc. You've heard arguments or discussions, something like that. And then it goes nowhere. Just people feel irritated with each other, uh, don't have a sense of camaraderie or getting anything done. They feel like they're having to fight against somebody. So what we want to do, and it's very simple, is to stop that and to move into real understanding. And so then notice that I've been describing this in quite a bit of detail, and it does take some extra time. If you want to stop fighting, it will take extra time, except for very often your fights are going to be wasting more time anyway. So, how are we going to move forward now after we've said, yes, I see or I understand? You're wanting this, and I'm validating that you see it this way. Is that correct? And then you're right. We can't have kids stay up late. They don't get enough sleep. They end up having lost their structure, etc., etc. So at that point, that's when you have a shift. Because at this point, hopefully, you've achieved the success in the other person relaxing and saying yes to you, which is, yeah, you do understand. Yeah. And you see how my side really is true and really would work. And then at that point, you say, yes, I thank you for appreciating me. And I do have some more ideas. And this is when you use your best judgment. If I've coached a couple in my office, of course, we set this up with an expectation of how this works after that. And one of the things that's always good is not to blindside people, not to manipulate, not to say things or do things without them knowing your intentions and what you're going to do. So these 3 pieces of coaching that I've been giving you with the yes and the you think and the you're right, instead of blindsiding them with that, when you want to try to use that, say, I was listening to Heather talk about good communication and stopping fighting, and these are the things that she was sharing, and I'd like to try it out. So I don't want to be manipulative of you, but I would like to try it out to see if it would help us. So you don't want to just plop it in or cagily try it and see how they respond, like you're making them a test subject. No, you want to let them in on it. Because then the goal is, after one person is really understood, at some point, maybe next, maybe in an hour, maybe in a day, or maybe next weekend, the other person is also heard, validated, and said, yeah, I see your point. You're right about that. And then, of course, because we need, if it's something important, like the example I'm using is parenting. Parenting is so critically important. We all care about the kids, and we care about empowering them. We care about giving them the best. And of course, sometimes we need to be very strong and hold the line for them so that we maintain decent standards. And we also want to be flexible. It's like, yeah, you're giving me good reasons. Yeah, I'm happy to be flexible here because that does make sense and that's really intelligent. And so let's rethink this. So we want it to be respectful. We want it to be alive. We want it to be learning. Um, and so then once both sides are heard, there needs then to be a dialogue and a strategy about, well, how are we going to use this? Uh, I like things more structured and strict and predictable, and you like things a little more flexible, easygoing, kind of creative. And now, we've been talking this through. Both of them are really valuable. So, what are we going to do about this particular instance? And then, of course, you the thing that started the argument in the first place, like, how often to give the car keys, when is curfew, in parenting examples. And thank you for tuning in tonight. So, do you have any examples about your fights or your arguments or people that you care about and you see them fighting or arguing? Does this make sense to you? Can you apply this in a realistic way to the things that get in the way of your communication, that help, that get you in arguing? Oh, good. Someone chimed in. Thank you. If I disagree, how can I be honest by saying you're right? I love it. Okay, give me an example of something that you disagree about. Like, for example, the piece that I was using with the person who wants to be strongly structured as a parent. I want my child to go to bed at a certain hour because I know that they need to get up and go to school and have good energy. And so even though your viewpoint is we need to be flexible, it, have a longer conversation, or maybe let them finish doing some reading or whatever it is, and be kind with that. Now, you may have the opposite view. However, it's true. You're right. We do thrive on structure. And it would be horrible. Our life would be completely chaos and uncivilized. And we wouldn't even have a decent life if we didn't have order and structure and precision. You're right. And the other person says, thank you. And then you say, and I think sometimes we can bend the structure a little bit if it's a good if it's for a good reason. Not that we want to get into chaos and out of control or get patterns where we don't have a decent life. I think that sometimes, so you don't use but, notice I didn't use but, I think that sometimes it's fun, or it's caring, or it's being flexible to an intelligent argument to say, yeah, we can bend the rules here, and we're consciously bending the rules because this is our structure. However, right now, it's a special day, like that. So does that make sense? Where you say, if I disagree, how can I be honest by saying you're right? I disagree with huge structure, with everything being structured, but I do disagree. I mean, I do agree. You are right that it is good in all of these ways. Does that make sense? I'm interested in you giving me an example also of when you strongly disagree. Choose something that it's hard to say you're right. Now there are things where we can't say you're right when it's illegal or unethical, or when it's betraying someone. We can't say that's right. That's when we draw the line, and that's that place where we must have the virtue of courage to say, here's the boundary, and no, that is not right. I'm not going to tolerate that. That is intolerable. What I'm talking about in this hour tonight is about good communication so that we can stop arguing. Okay, so when he says, I don't drink too much, how can I say you're right? Ooh, good example, dear. He says, I don't drink too much. Now, from his viewpoint, he doesn't drink too much. And so if you want to, now that can be a very touchy subject, can't it? Because that could be going into alcoholism or something. So let's not say it's not alcoholism, because then that's a whole nother deal, right? So if let's just say, for example, this guy drinks to the place where his speech is slurred, and that may be drinking too much. So one of the things that you can say in that situation is, yes, I know you're right that you see it as you don't drink too much. And I'm sure from, whatever it is that you like to do, um, it feels just fine to you. And tell me, what is it that, and here I'm just improvising for you, because what I would want to know if you guys were in my office, I would want to know his patterns around drinking. There are all different social patterns around that. Maybe this guy um, was on the football team, and in the locker room after the game, they drank beer, or went to a tailgate party and drank a lot of beer, or were in a bar, and it was just part of their hanging out, or their um, friendship, or visiting. And the pattern is that they all drink too much, in terms of they're not quite in control anymore, slurred speech, a little clumsy, which is, now their functioning is being affected by the alcohol. So I would want to know where that came from. Um, Other people, it's like one glass of wine and that's it. That's what a lady and a gentleman does. Or sometimes you stretch out, but you make darn sure you have a designated driver. There are all different ways that we are with alcohol, right? And all of us are using it or drinking it the way we are accustomed to. And that's right for us. It may not be right for another person, but it's right for us. So you can say, you're right. From your viewpoint, I can understand that you don't drink too much. And then you can give an illustration. It's like, I've seen other people, and when they drink too much, they thus and so, and you don't do that. You don't drink too much from that viewpoint. Does that make sense? Of course, that's only the beginning of the conversation, isn't it? Because then if this person does drink to a place where they shouldn't be driving, or their speech is slurred, or they're a little out of control, at that point, then you need to say your side, where you say, I know that you're right, that from your viewpoint, you don't drink too much, and you're just having a good time. And so I want to ask you to consider me, if I'm saying this for you, dear. I would say, I really want to behave like a lady, and I don't want to get out of control or slur my speech, around people. And so if you guys are going to do that, then I just want to have an understanding with you in the most respectful way that I will get a taxi, or I'll go home by myself and just let you guys have your fun. But I also want to make sure that however you get home, it's going to be safe, dear. It's illegal to drive when you've had a little bit too much to drink. So of course, thank you for asking that question. Um, when you have a conversation like this about drinking too much, something that's pretty touchy, of course you don't want to have it when you're drinking, right? And you want to have it when you're both awake, you're not hungry, you're not tired, and when you're philosophical and relaxed. So, maybe at home after dinner, or you ask, I'd like to have this conversation with you, and I don't want, so then this is me sharing with you to use cushion statements when you communicate. um, she said, if I said that, he'd say, that's right, and keep on drinking. She says, okay, she says, I see. So will it still work to say, you're right from your viewpoint? Yes. Yes, that's right. That's exactly this way of communicating. You're right from your viewpoint. And then you're going to have, this is a sticky one. You're going to have, because alcohol and drinking too much alcohol, this goes into doing things against the law. This goes into behavior that's not a lady and a gentleman. And this goes into something that could harm somebody else. So the one that you brought up is a pretty sticky subject. And for purposes of just this 1 hour, I'm not confident that I can coach you with all the things that you need, because I would need to know more about your situation and the history, how this works, how this doesn't work. But drinking too much is against the law. I mean, unless you're in your own home, and even then, it's disrespectful to be out of control with alcohol. And a lady and a gentleman don't do that to themselves or each other. You know, maybe sometimes you have a couple of drinks and you're a little loosey-goosey, but you don't drive, and you don't visit with your friends. You don't. If you're a lady and a gentleman, you don't do that. So, and that's a difficult boundary to draw sometimes, isn't it? So then, I don't know your relationship and how you communicate and what your style is with each other. But one of the things about drinking too much is that sometimes if he drinks too much, then you don't feel safe. So at that point, after you've done the validation and the you're right from your viewpoint, you have to say, and I'd like you to hear how it affects me. And you ask permission and set up a time. Do you want to hear how it affects me? Can I have your empathy? I need you to understand my side too. Now, if he's pretty healthy and pretty smart, he'll say, absolutely, I want to know. When you're in a sincere situation, not when you're goofing around, not when you've already been drinking, right? This is going to have to be a serious conversation. If he's drinking too much, so this is me now going into quote unquote using. Drinking too much usually to me says that there's something missing in life, and that using too much means to me that maybe the person is bored, or they are covering up something, or they don't have enough fun in life, or they don't have enough activity. Something's missing if people drink too much. And that can be quite a mining activity to find out what it is that's missing. Sometimes people drink too much because they're so shy and they haven't learned to be free and easy with social skills, and drinking too much gets them past their shyness. Sometimes drinking too much numbs them and gets them in a place where they feel good about themselves and life, even though their life is missing a whole lot. Sometimes they're angry about something, or they haven't grieved something and they're blocking their feelings by drinking when they're not busy with something else. Sometimes it's an old habit learned in the locker room or in the pool hall or out on the ranch or in the club. So drinking too much can come from so many different places. That's one that needs higher level work. So since I can't do that with you without having a conversation with you and knowing your case in more details, I'll take it to the next step, which is at that point, you want to be able to be heard by him. And that's a place that you sincerely set up where the two of you are having a sincere conversation, not where there's avoidance or defensiveness or tired, as I said before, where it's a sincere conversation. And sometimes you need to do it in writing so that it's really exact and it comes across well. And you do need to use cushion statements. So email me for cushion statements. So, and here's my email address. Did I write that right? I did. So email me and ask me for cushion statements. Cushion statements, it's an art form, and my husband Jack is the best. He did cushion statements so fabulously when I met him, I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, cushion statements are setups. And they're not setups that are dishonest. It's honest and open communication, almost over communication about your intent, affirming the positive parts of your relationship. So, for example, if you needed to be heard about his drinking, so this is me just off the top of my head, right? When you can be sincere and you can be heard, you're both sober and in a good emotional place, not grouchy or irritated with each other. So, for example, you would say, honey, there's something really, really important that I want to talk with you about, and frankly, I'm kind of scared. Now, did you see those two cushion statements? You said it's important to you. You want to talk to him about it, and you're scared. So this is me saying, I want to talk to you about something, because I care, right? And I'm scared. Whenever you say, I'm scared, or I'm feeling a little embarrassed about this, usually, if the other person's a healthy person, their guard will drop and they'll say, you're scared? Really? You're scared of talking to me? Or you're feeling bad about this? Well, then, how can I help? That's what you want to do. So you start with cushion statements that say, I really care about us. And I need to talk to you because this is really hard. And I'm scared because I don't want to push you away. And I want to be really intelligent. And I really believe in us. And I know that you understand me so well in so many different ways. And here you can use but or and. And I'm worried. I'm really worried about how we use alcohol in our lifestyle. Now, I'm not meaning to tell you what to do. I don't ever mean to criticize you. And I'm not sure where we're going with this. I don't know what the best strategy is or how to make me feel like I have peace of mind with this. I really need to know your views, and I really need to know how you want to live and make me feel safe and like a respected lady. So, do you see all those cushion statements I just used, which is explanatory? I'm explaining myself and where I'm at and what I believe in. I didn't ask for anything specific because that's up to the dialogue. And, I'm not, one of the things you always try to put something in your cushion statements that says, I am not telling you what to do, or I don't want to push you around. It's not my job to control you or to say what you do or don't do. That's would be disrespectful of me. And I need to talk to you about this because I'm worried. I'm kind of scared about it. So that's kind of how you introduce talking about something that's this serious, so that you've set it up. An emotionally intelligent, pretty healthy person will respond with sincerity to that. Now, if he doesn't respond with sincerity to that, then you have a real problem. And that means there may be addiction. It may mean that he's holding on to something that he doesn't want to deal with. It may mean that he doesn't really respect you, which in that case means, is this a relationship that can go forward? And if it's that inappropriate, then it's in some way disrespectful to you. So that then I would want you to talk to someone like me, a third party, where you can come to the third party and both of you say your sides and get very clear on respecting both people and what's missing in your relationship. Because almost all the time when there's some kind of using going on, whether it's alcohol or some kind of prescription or illegal drugs or addiction of some sort, like food addiction, sex addiction, spending money, something is missing. And sometimes various levels of things are missing, and sometimes healing or grieving is missing too. So any thoughts, dear? Am I on track with you? Has this been helpful? I'd really like to know. And so tonight, thank you for tuning in. Thank you so much. Very helpful. Oh, good. Thank you. And please email me for the cushion statements and for communication materials that you would like. That's why I'm here. I have lots of them and I love sharing them. So thank you for listening tonight to my 3 top secrets on how to stop arguing. It's yes, you, and yours. Yes, I see. Yes, I understand. Or yes, I want to understand. Then you think this? Am I on track with that? I want to validate you. You're wanting this. This is your strategy. And then yours, which is you're right, not you're wrong. Which means I am validating you and I am telling you what I'm hearing you really want. And you're right to want that. Well, in the case of alcohol, this guy is right in wanting something. And alcohol may not be the thing that really is going to meet the need. Or it may be much more complex than that. And that's what fascinates me. That's why I love this question and answer live format, because people are complex, everyone's different, and my work is always fascinating and meaningful. So thank you for tuning in tonight. This is Heather Carlisle. I'm signing off, and I'll be back next week. Thank you, dear ones. Let's see, what did she say? Thank you. Sounds like the real key is the phrase, from your viewpoint. Yes, because it's like you want to understand the other person. I need to remember that too. Thank you, Heather. You're so welcome. Good night.